You see a black screen now. That's on purpose. um, so I've been listening to or most of the talks, and I'm afraid going to repeat a lot of things, but maybe I can shape it a little differently, because I realized that creating future learning spaces, as I call it, I label it in my talk, involves a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, and a very important group of stakeholders is the students, you. So I'm talking especially to you, and participating and understanding the needs and the goals on the other side. And they're very important to create future and sustainable learning spaces. So it's really wonderful to have all these input from outside you created in this conference. And but I'm also liking, I like to set the message also to yeah, help you get empowered and engaged in creating learning spaces for the future together. And so I'm inviting you to my learning journey, to learning space design and future-oriented learning space design. And I guess, but we talked a lot about new learning and what learning in the future means, or learning at least actually now means. And I brought some examples that show how new learning approaches can be put into practice. And you also see some examples that you've already seen. So I'm also very excited to listen to Pete after my talk, because he's from a technical university in Delft, and I'm involving this example from the Faculty of Architecture. And I'm happy to get some feedback from you and get engaged with you to my thoughts and approaches. And my learning journey began like 4 years ago with gathering with experts and using our platform, the Hochschulforum Digitalisierung, to create awareness of physical learning spaces, because we come from a very technological perspective. And I figured that this can't be all of it. The entire digital transformation also shapes the places where we study. So I was lucky to publish some papers with the Hochschulforum Digitalisierung, and I also was able to look at some examples in Europe, what they're doing differently, and also was invited to a podcast to talk about what I'm talking about. And my job is to look at examples, to find trends, and to put them into perspective, but also not just to find examples and talk about it. My job is also or what I want to do more is to look behind the scenes, and to look how these learning space projects, or learning space projects that were put into practice, because it's a long process. And it was, like I said, a lot of stakeholders, and in the entire process of putting together a concept that is sustainable and future oriented, it can be complicated. And I want to to look a little bit further into it, and also in the future, and with students together. New learning, what do I mean with it? I think this picture is it means a lot to me, because I've been asking myself the same question: why do we teach like this? So rows, and in one direction, it's very, you have a hierarchy of students and teacher, and this has been the way for several hundred of years. But learning is actually this. So you learn with external input, you learn in groups and in a dialogue. you need to experiment, you need to learn, you have emotional experiences to really learn something. So what's happening in practice and in your brain is totally different from the old school concept of teaching. And there has been a lot of new approaches or new perspectives on how to put this into practice. Like, for example, project-based learning. This would be a a method of what new learning can look like. So it's a lot more practical, and it's also about collaborating. We heard a lot about collaboration, and these are skills that are trained with this kind of method that is, I believe, very important, not just for the future. It's already important to understand other people, to communicate your thoughts, to create ideas together, to put yourself on the other side, and yeah, work on new solutions. And this also has to do with communicative skills. And you don't train these kind of skills by listening for 90 minutes in a lecture. Of course, you train other skills, but there needs to be a new balance, I believe. And it's about, like I said, new skills, digital working skills. It's about how to express myself. It's about how I use my brain also with others, and so on and so forth. So project-based learning could be an example of new learning approaches. And you see that you can't really train these kind of skills if you have a setting like this. I stole this from your website, and maybe you can see yourself sitting in this lecture hall at the university, but there are also other examples that show how the traditional learning spaces in higher education institutions in Germany. But there are examples, like I said, I wanted to bring some examples who thought about what new learning means and how they can implement it into practice and into the student and study life. The Code University in Berlin, maybe you heard of it. It's a very young university founded a couple of years ago, and their teaching method or their teaching approach is totally based on projects. So they do have little lecture settings, but they team up through the entire semester with other students, and they have to work on real projects. And throughout this process, that is always guided with the teacher, with the professor, and I believe they can train these skills that I've talked about earlier, like communication, collaborating, and so on and so forth, creating new ideas. And they have team spaces specially made for these occasions. They have also casual meeting places, so meeting other people, not just in a formal setting like a seminar or a lecture, but also talking to other students, having a cafe, or they also meet professors, teachers here. That's also part of their design, their learning space design. So meeting people by accident, and then talk about what they're working on, and maybe what they're missing. So they always stay in touch. And they also have this idea of creating a community campus. They have some similar approaches like Delft. There are a lot of companies also based in this building where they have their their university, and they gather with these companies, mostly tech companies, for their projects. So, and everyone's meeting everybody on every level of this building, and this is the goal, to have this community campus. And creating these team spaces and this entire learning space concept is not just made by the people who are planning this, but the planning new rooms, new spaces. They always involve students. So there's always a task force that involves students to have their thoughts, their needs right there to develop their spaces further. This is an ongoing process. So they do this every semester. They evaluate how these spaces are working and if it's the right or do we need to change anything. And like I said, students are always a part of it. And there's Technical University Delft. You've seen this photo before, maybe from a slightly different angle. But I like this example so much because it shows how you can create an open space concept and see how lively this campus life can be. And you have several larger tables here where students can gather. This is the faculty, the architecture faculty here. You heard the sad story about the burnt down building, which created a lot of urgency to find a quick and new solution. And this is the result. And of course, they have an advantage. They were architects who built this, and so they already had a vision of a very lively campus environment there. So everything is very open, and you see the material, it's glass, you see what's going on. And they wanted to create this form of transparency, so you don't have this single cell offices anymore. They also implemented a new work approach, a flex working concept, where you don't have these fixed working hours or working offices there, where you need to book your place, book a room when you need to have some privacy. Or so basically the message here is they formed a very open space concept. And also what I found in all the examples that I was looking at is that they embrace these casual meetings. So they want to have areas where people can just gather and meet and exchange ideas, and with outside of a very formal setting like the lecture or the seminar. And the third example that I wanted to show you is the Technical University of Applied Science in Mittelhessen. This is the library, and a couple of years ago they had the chance to reorganize everything, and they had a very that's what they tell other people about their journey. They were in a not a good place at this time, and the service wasn't working. They were really unsatisfied, also the people who were working at the library, and they wanted to create a completely new concept. And not just speaking of the interior design and what kind of offering you can have there, but also combining it with services, with learning services, and with workshops on how to do scientific work, writing, and for example. And they used 50% of the area that was occupied with books. They were able to, I'm sorry, they were able to create 50% more space, by getting rid of books that were very old and not used anymore, also because of the digitalization or digital services. And so they were able to create much more space for group work, for project work, for meeting other students. And they created these areas in where you have to work quietly, where you have to where you have spaces for yourself, and also where you can communicate. And so these different areas also have different rules how you interact there. And they were very happy with this outcome, and the students as well. So this is another photo from their communicative area where you also have access to cafes and all of that, and so this creates this atmosphere of also welcoming the students there, invite them to stay and meet and work on on different projects. Quick takeaways for me or for you. Future learning spaces offer variety, and we also heard this before. It's about supporting more individual learning scenarios, no one size fits all solution, and like for mass lectures, future learning spaces also embrace casual meetings. That's what I saw in every example that I was looking into and talking to the people. That was a very main goal. So putting the people and connecting people and collaboration in the center of a concept, that's a very good sign. So not just talking about technology, but talking about how we bring people together through architectural structures. And a very important learning for me was, because we were really coming from this technological perspective, is that creating spaces where you can have these new or put into practice these new learning approaches is also part of the digital transformation. And like I said, my message to you, as all the students who are still listening and beyond, is become one of these change makers who are who bring in their ideas for future learning. And I think it's very important that students become part of this process and participate in creating future learning spaces together. And Hochschulforum Digitalisierung, who I work for, or this is the main project that I'm involved in, it's a very important goal for us to work together with students, create new ideas, also empowering them to raise their ideas and communicate them back into their institutions. So if you want to stay in touch, please stay in touch. I would love to hear more from you, and we can exchange more ideas, and maybe also how you can get involved as a change maker. So feel free.